Welcome back to Pursuing Justice. I'm Harriet Hendel. Each month, I like to choose a theme that kind of stays with us all the way through the four podcasts. And this month, we are going to be talking about a topic called reentry. And I'm not really going to say much more because I want my guests to explain what that is and all of the issues around it. We have two guests to tell us more. Today, we are going to meet a very dear friend of mine, Barbara Richards, who is the founder of Project 180. She is the CEO and president as well. She's a native of Oklahoma, and she began working with incarcerated citizens back in 1997 as the coordinator of a men's support group in the San Francisco jail system. She then moved to Florida in 2004, founded Project 180 in 2006. So, Barbara, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Harriet, and hello to all your listeners.
Okay. So you created a reentry project called Project 180. Can you tell us why you decided to form this nonprofit organization and what your mission is?
Yes, I decided to found Project 180 because of the educational disparity between individuals who are incarcerated and those who are not. It's quite a wide gap. So I decided to try and do something about that. Our mission for Project 180 is that we seek to reintegrate formerly incarcerated citizens into community life. And I think it's really important for us also to mention our vision, which is to reduce poverty, homelessness, unemployment, and criminal behavior among formerly incarcerated citizens.
Okay. How long ago did you decide to address the issue of reentry, and why is this so important to you and to the people impacted by reentry from prison?
It was in 1997, as in your introduction, and it's really essential not only for the individuals we serve directly who are getting out of prison or jail, but also for the community, because incarceration is a life interrupter. It's very similar in its impact to a natural disaster like a tidal wave or a hurricane or an earthquake, because it destroys everything that someone has built. When you're incarcerated, everything in your regular life stops. So I think it's also really important because most of the people we lock up in our country have a disease. It's a metabolic brain disease. It causes poor executive decision making, and it's called addiction. So that's why it's so important.
All right. Can you talk a little bit more about what you just said about the idea of addiction and maybe its impact? I'm sure it has a ripple effect. Tell us a little more about that.
Okay. Did you say a peripheral effect?
No, I said a ripple effect.
Ripple effect, yes. Well, both. Both peripheral and ripple.
We'll take them both.
Sure. Well, I'll probably be speaking a little bit about our residential program a little later on. But the stories that I hear from our residents have really informed me about addiction. So let's say that a young person is engaged in risk-taking behavior, and the most common risk-taking behavior amongst his or her peers happens to be taking drugs or drinking alcohol. Or they might have a trusted adult in their lives who introduce them to drugs or alcohol. We had one gentleman in our program whose stepfather shot him up for the first time. We had someone else in the program who was 12 years old when a trusted adult friend introduced him to heroin. So there are all different kinds of reasons why people might start using, sometimes from an injury, and that affects one for the rest of his or her life if he or she catches the disease of addiction, in which the pathways and the chemicals in the brain change and they affect the prefrontal cortex where executive decision making is made. So from then on, an individual, just like our bodies and brains tell us to breathe, an addict's body and brain tell him or her to use, and everything else pretty much goes by the wayside. So in order to get the drugs to feed the body and the brain, people will do just about anything, just as you or I might do anything to continue breathing.
Great. All right. So that's certainly informative what you just told us. Now, along the way, in thinking about putting a program like this together, a nonprofit organization together, did you face challenges in creating this organization?
I did, and some of them were internal.
What does that mean?
One of those was a real lack of knowledge about the nonprofit world and how it works, what's necessary to make a nonprofit thrive. And it took me about 10 or 12 years to make that happen for Project 180. So I would say that was probably the greatest barrier. I thought everybody would hear about this issue that I began talking about and realize how incredibly valuable it is for the entire community to sort of get a handle on the issue of prisoner reentry by helping people when they get out rather than just throwing them back onto the streets. And had no idea that I'd have to be a fundraiser in the in the process. So clearly a lack of funding was part of it in the very beginning too. That was one of the challenges I faced. And Florida Corrections was also a man's world. People could not understand why a woman would be interested in assisting men or women who are getting out of prison and jail to help them thrive in the community. So I would say those were probably some of the main reasons. And I was also, of course, doing it in Florida. And as I'm sure, many states are in the same situation where things that we're doing in Florida now were things that we were doing in San Francisco 20 years ago in the field of corrections and reentry. So, I think that we have a long way to go here, but things are finally starting to move. And I'm very, very grateful to be a part of that.
In terms of the challenges, I just wanted to ask you this question. Were there people who felt this really wasn't necessary to do, that men and women would just find their own way? And why were you putting so much effort and energy into this kind of program?
It's we have kind of a bad connection, but what I understood you to ask was, why did I put so much effort into it?
No, I was saying, were there people who kind of pushed back against you, saying, why would you bother to do something like this? They'll adjust to society when they get out. Why do they need some special help?
I think more than pushback, which I had very little of to my face. I'm sure there might have been some, comments, not to my face. But I would say people were more curious. And a lot of people, especially starting about 7 or 8 years ago, began realizing, this issue was kind of on the periphery of their consciousness. And people would say, I've always wondered what happens to people when they get out of prison. How are they expected to make it when they probably don't have very much? People get out with very little, right? Don't they just maybe get a bus ticket, and that's about it. And so that opened up many conversations with people who are still active in Project 180 today.
Oh, that's great. So we haven't talked about what Project 180 actually does, and I'd like you to explain your residential program, if you would, and how it benefits the men.
Okay. Well, our residential program is really the heart of Project 180. We also have classes in prisons and jails, a CEO workforce education program, and a financial literacy course. We hold a lecture series and have an information and referral service for individuals all throughout the state of Florida. And our residential program and a pilot program that we're starting called First Week Out really are kind of like the heart of what we do. And the residential program, we have created an extremely comprehensive array of services and assistance for individuals who are in the program. Both of our houses are for men only. And it's very much like a family. It's a very caring atmosphere, and that I think is just as important as the other things that we offer. We're small enough so that we can serve residents in a very in-depth manner. And the men in the program tell us it's the Rolls Royce of reentry programs. So
that's wonderful.
I think that's kind of funny, but I'm proud about it as well. We focus on stability in several areas. One is, of course, recovery from drugs and alcohol, housing, finances, health, and the restoration of family and community relationships. We do that through a variety of means. We provide not only the housing, but we also go shopping every week, and we get the food from which the men make their meals. The men contribute $175 a week toward a program fee, and they get services back in spades for that fee. We also provide clothing, work clothing, tools, steel-toed boots, transportation. We get people a phone right away. We have a program where we will match someone's efforts to have their driver's license restored by paying off the fees and fines that prevent them from having a driver's license. And we will match their funds that they use to pay off their old fees and fines up to $1,000. And then we have a medical, dental, vision, and mental health program as well, where we recently received funding from a giving circle here in Sarasota, 100 Women Who Care. And we have enough funding from that to be able to offer up to $1,000 per resident to receive medical care. So there are some fairly unusual aspects of the program that are really appreciated by the men who come into the program.
Sounds wonderful. Now, I have a couple questions based on what you just told us. You talk about the men contributing money, where, having been in prison, you earn, 30 cents an hour. Where does that money come from? That's one. And the other question I had is, we talked about addiction. Are they clean and sober, or are they required to attend, support group meetings? What's the story there?
Okay, with the program fee, we do not expect anyone to come up with the money immediately. And we used to occasionally get scholarships for individuals to help them with their first